Hi, my name is Courtney Ostaff, and I'm a board member of the West Virginia Home Education Association. And today I want to walk you through beginning to homeschool in West Virginia and some of the most frequently asked questions about homeschooling in West Virginia. And then we're going to end up talking about curricula. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, our topic today is homeschooling in West Virginia. I'm Courtney Ostaff, and I'm a board member of the West Virginia Home Education Association. And so very often, the very first question about homeschooling in West Virginia is, what is it? What is this thing that people do? And in West Virginia, homeschool is legally defined as instruction in reading, language, mathematics, science, and social studies. So in West Virginia, homeschoolers are the ones who provide their children with this instruction in these areas, these 5 areas, as well as an annual assessment. Parents or their students' guardians are responsible for providing the instruction, not the public schools. Once you've decided that you want to be a homeschooler and you file the paperwork, you are the one who is responsible. Let's talk a little bit about the history thereof. In 1983, West Virginians began homeschooling under Exemption K, but in 1986, subsection B of Exemption B of West Virginia Code 1881 became the legal method of homeschooling. And actually, today, over 13,000 children are homeschooled in West Virginia, and more join every year. And the most common questions. So, what about? Well, what about academics? Actually, homeschoolers generally do well academically. In fact, children who received a structured homeschooling had superior test results compared to their peers, anywhere from a half grade advantage in mathematics to a 2.2 grade levels in reading. And remember, this is according to their peers. So what they did was they matched children who were homeschooled with children of similar socioeconomic backgrounds. So that was actually one of the best studies that I've read about homeschooling. The next question, oh no, what about socialization? Homeschoolers do tend to walk their own path, otherwise they wouldn't be homeschooling. In some ways, it's a lot easier to pop your kids on the bus in the morning. But homeschoolers have many opportunities to be social. In fact, many experienced homeschoolers are so busy with activities outside the home that they have to work to find time to do all the academics. And my favorite answer to this question is, yeah, I got that handle. You want some bean dip? Or nachos? Or would you like a drink? Or, hey, look at that bird. There's a squirrel. The other question is, what about special education? And this works both for children who are gifted, who are twice exceptional, who have different exceptionalities. And one of the strengths of homeschooling is the ability to tailor the education to meet the needs of the individual student. One size does not fit all, especially for students with special needs. It's very difficult as an instructor in a public school classroom to provide differentiated education for 24 different children. It is an art, it is work. I greatly respect public school teachers, and I do not underestimate the difficulty. So as a parent, you may find that it's a lot easier to do what is essentially one-to-one tutoring. Homeschooling parents have access to a wide range of resources to help their children. Not everything that you do in public school, but sometimes more things than you do in public school. Now, many parents are interested in sports. Homeschoolers in West Virginia cannot play sports regulated by the WVSSAC, but depending on your area, your student can participate in local private leagues and teams, as my own child does. And what about college? I have a high schooler and I want to homeschool them. Oh no, can they still go to college? Not a problem. Some of the best colleges in the world love homeschoolers and accept them actually at higher rates than the general applicant. West Virginia parents issue their children's diplomas and transcripts, and these are legally equivalent to public school diplomas. College is not a problem. So, what don't you need? Well, for one thing, we are not bound to 180 days of instruction. There is no minimum amount of days or hours of instruction required in West Virginia. No county approval is required. You're not asking for permission to homeschool your student. You are giving them notification that you are homeschooling your student. No public school standards are required. And in fact, um, other than in reading and mathematics, the sequence for learning pretty much anything else is a matter of judgment and not even professional judgment. So, for example, I didn't emphasize economics with my kindergartner or my first grader, and I emphasized ancient history. We studied ancient history for first grade, and she loved it, and it was not a big deal because I don't have to deal with meeting the public school standards. Um, no standardized tests are required. If you have a child who breaks down and cries and crawls under the table when those bubble sheets come out, you can relax because you don't have to do that. Can you give your child a standardized test? Yes, of course, and we'll talk about that a little later on, but you do not have to give your child a standardized test. And you yourself do not have to possess a teaching certification in order to teach your child. I happen to possess one because that's my profession and that's what I do for a living, but you do not need one. Now, correspondingly, special education is a sticky wicket. So if your child has an IEP and you withdraw them from school to do homeschooling, the IEP doesn't apply at home. Remember, no public school standards. However, if then later on you wish to re-enroll them in public school, the whole applying for an IEP process starts over. You have to do the reteach intervention, all that jazz, and so they're not going to slide back into the public school system with an IEP. Because as a homeschooler, ongoing special education services are not required to be provided by the schools. Now, there are a couple school districts in the state that are more flexible and do provide ongoing special education services, but they're not required to do so. What they are required to do by federal law is to assess your child for special education. And that has its good points and its down points. The good points is that you're entitled to it. The down points is that the standard that they're using is whether or not your child qualifies for services in the public school, not whether or not your child has any kind of learning disability. The learning disability or other exceptionality has to be interfering with the access to their classroom education, which is different than the standard that you're using as a homeschooler is my child having difficulty. So those are some key things to think about. Now, what do you not get as a homeschooler? Well, the first thing that you don't get are textbooks. Yes, legally speaking, if the school has a textbook for a subject and they have extra textbooks for that subject, then they will give them to you. However, first off, they have to be using a textbook, and many schools are not using textbooks for various subjects anymore. Then they have to have extra ones, and they don't have to give you the teacher's edition or the workbook or whatnot. So that's not always something that you even want to think about. They do not have to enroll your child in public classes and online classes. Now, there is a pilot online education program that counties are working on. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But those individual online classes through the West Virginia Virtual School out of Charleston, you are entitled to enroll in those on a 1 or 2 basis, but they're not meant to supplement or take the place of you as a homeschool educator. So that is a different ball of wax. Again, no WVSSAC sports are open to homeschoolers, so that's like football and track and tennis and baseball and wrestling and basketball, all that kind of thing, not available to homeschoolers. Now, this is very difficult for people to understand. No online schools are recognized as being accredited by the West Virginia Department of Education. Accreditation is kind of a slippery thing. Anybody can get accredited for anything if you are willing to pay enough. All right, just because it's a school that has some kind of accreditation doesn't necessarily make it a good school. Correspondingly, just because a school doesn't have accreditation doesn't mean it's not a good school. And accreditation is irrelevant, completely irrelevant to the state of West Virginia. So even if, for example, you have a high school student and you sign them up for an online school and they say, oh, it's accredited and my kid did 2 years there and I want to go back and enroll them in public school, it doesn't matter because West Virginia doesn't recognize the accreditation. Your student, the stuff that they did there doesn't count according to the state of West Virginia. Correspondingly, any diploma that some sort of online school may issue you doesn't count according to the state of West Virginia. The only diploma that counts is the one you issue as a homeschooling parent. And again, no ongoing special education services are provided to homeschoolers. Now, so that's the bad news. The good news is what you don't have to do. You don't have to be the responsible instructor, just like you would probably hire out your child's piano lessons or find them a math tutor. You can hire out all parts of your child's education. You don't have to do it all. You're responsible for making sure that they get educated, but you don't have to be the responsible instructor. Now, there is no waiting period. You can drop off that form at the board office and take your kid home right then. You don't have to have any kind of form or any kind of anything from the public school system. You don't need any piece of paper from them to homeschool. You don't have to have a college degree to homeschool. You don't need one. And there are no limits on the grades that you can teach. You can teach your child as a homeschooling parent all the way through the 12th grade. What don't you get? Well, you don't get a public school graduation because your child's not attending public school. They're not going to walk. You don't have to do grades. You don't have to get grades. You don't have to issue grades. You don't have to have anything to do with grades. And there is no requirement that students work on their grade level above or below. For example, at one point, my child was working on 6 different grade levels and 6 different subjects. It happens, and that's okay. And no public schools may deny parents a copy of their child's educational record. You are entitled to a copy of that educational record. So you may say, okay, all right, I'm still interested. I'm in at this point. Well, how do you get started? Well, you only need one piece of paper. We call it the notification of intent or the NOI. That's all you need. And on this piece of paper, you could even handwrite it on a piece of notebook paper. You can say, you date it, you put the county that your child is in, because in West Virginia, our school districts go by the county. You put your name of the child and the age of the child, of the school-age children being homeschooled. And you write, the children listed above will receive instruction in reading, language, mathematics, science, and social studies. Further, the children, or child, depending if you only have one, will be annually assessed in accordance with West Virginia Code 1881C2. I shall notify the county superintendent upon termination of home instruction for a child who is of compulsory attendance age, or upon moving to a new county. Evidence of a high school diploma or equivalent or a post-secondary degree or certificate excuse me, for the persons providing the instruction is either attached or on file in your office. And then you put your name on it and you send it in. Now, how you send it in, well, that is a little bit of a debate. Personally, I make a copy so then I know what I have, and then I mail it certified return receipt so that I have legal proof that it was sent in, and I have a signature of the person who received it at the board office, whether they like it or not. Now, other people swear by taking it down to the board office, having them stamp it received, and making you a copy of that stamped received note. Either one will do. Now, there are a couple special situations that we need to talk about. Number one, if your child has already been enrolled in preschool, or either they're in the public preschool or they're in private preschool through the county collaborative or just private preschool in general, you still need to send in a written notification. Even if you want to homeschool preschool, if you like, I have a 4-year-old this year and I'm going to do some homeschooling preschool. If your student has already enrolled in public preschool or those collaborative centers, you must send in a written notification of withdrawal. It doesn't have to be a formal NOI, but you have to send in a written notification of withdrawal. Otherwise, the NOI isn't required until your child is age 6 by 9/1/2018, or starting in 2019, 6 by July 1st, 2019. That's when you do it. Now, having said that, right, most of us are going to do kindergarten with our children when they're age 5. So I'll use my own child as an example. She's 4. Her birthday is in March. And so in March of 2018, she will turn 5. Okay. She does not meet the 6 by July 1st this is 2019, she'll turn 5, because it's 2018 now. She won't be 6 by July 1 for the notification of intent. So she's going to turn 5, and this will be her pre-K year, right? 2018, 2019 will be pre-K, okay? And so she'll still be 5 on July 1st. Fine, I don't have to send a notification of intent. But come the fall of 2019, 2020, I'm going to want to do, she'll be 5 years old, I'm going to want to do kindergarten. If I think that there's even the slimmest chance that I want her to go to 1st grade in a West Virginia public school, I need to have an assessment done for kindergarten as proof that I homeschooled her for kindergarten. It's my legal proof. And so I will probably send in a notification of intent, even though it is not legally required. Now, if you're 100% sure that you're not going to send them to West Virginia 1st grade, then you can skip the NOI and the assessment, because she's not yet 6. The next year she'll be 6. That'd be 2020 to 2021, right? And she'll be 6 by July 1st of 2020. And on that July, I will then send in the NOI, and I don't have to tell them what grade it is, right? But she'll be doing 1st grade work, and I will do an assessment for 1st grade in 2021. Okay. So, but that really only works if you're not going to send them to 1st grade in a West Virginia public school. Otherwise, what will happen is they'll say, hey, your kid didn't do kindergarten. They have to go back and do it. All right. So that is the sticky wicket there. Now, the sticky wicket, on the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, is high school. All right. So let's talk about the high school caveat. No public high school credits are issued for homeschooling. If your high school students wish to return to public school, because teenagers change their mind, they have to begin where they left off. And I don't care where you sent them or how accredited it is, it doesn't count. So if your child has never attended high school and they're 18 years old and they want to go back to public high school, they'll still have to start in the 9th grade. So you have to beware, buyer beware. On the other hand, if you homeschool high school, you can issue your student's diploma and it's legally equivalent to a public school diploma. However, you are responsible for all the things that public high schools do, like transcripts, right? Issuing the diploma. Some places that you work as an adult, not in the state that I've ever heard, but other places, if you think your child might want to ever live someplace else, want a raised seal diploma. So you may have to invest in getting your child a raised seal diploma. And if you think that your child may ever want to pursue higher education, go to college, then you are going to have to make sure that whatever they study in high school will help get them admitted to college. And you're going to have to, take care of all of the college admission tests and the making sure that their transcript reflects the admissions requirements and so on and so forth, which sounds kind of scary, but we're here to help. People do it every year. Students go to WVU, students go to Princeton, students go to Harvard and Yale. Not a problem. So that said, other than those caveats, what can you do with your child as a homeschooler? Well, basically, you can do whatever you want. Supplementary instruction through other activities is permissible and encouraged, including field trips and co-ops and lessons and sports. So what is a co-op? A co-op is when a group of parents get together and help each other teach a child. So, my child goes to learning options on Thursdays in Fairmont, and the parents set up classes that they want to teach, and they teach them as a group, and they all get together. It's a nice social activity. Some public schools are open to enrolling homeschool students for up to 3 or more class periods per day. Now, caveat, if you enroll for more than 3 class periods, if you enroll for more than half time, then you are considered a full-time student and you're no longer homeschooling. So you have to be aware of that issue there. Now, so you have said, I'm going to homeschool. You file your NOI, you school your child all year long. What do you have to do on the other end? Every year, every home educated child of compulsory age must be assessed in reading and language arts and math, science, and social studies. And parents must maintain copies of each student's academic assessment for 3 years. And the assessment results for students in 3rd, 5th, 8th, and 11th grades must be submitted to the county by June 30th. And so again, that's 3rd, 5th, 8th, and 11th grades. Even if your child is, say, in 1st grade, you still have to get the assessment done. You just don't have to turn it in. You have to hold on to it for 3 years. That's your proof. So if the CPS worker ever comes knocking on your door and wants to see that you're actually doing something with your kid, that you're not educationally neglecting them, because that's a thing, then you can hand them this piece of paper and say, hey, look, I got my assessment. I did it. We're done. And so you may say to yourself, great, let's do this assessment thing. How do I do this? All right, so you have 4 options. All right, 4 options. So let's talk about them from least popular to most popular. An alternative assessment agreed to by the county superintendent. In the last 5 years, I have only heard of one person doing this in the state of West Virginia, and they bitterly, bitterly regretted doing it. This is not recommended. Not recommended. Okay. This people do fairly regularly, I hear bitter complaints because it may be free. You generally have to register in January with your local public school. And then you come in sometime in May, and it usually takes a couple weeks to get all the testing done. But the West Virginia public schools aren't under the same deadlines. And so what happens is that we have to have our test results in by June 30th. They do not. And every year somebody's like, oh dear, my student did their test and the county wants this assessment and I haven't gotten it back yet. And you know what? That's on you. That's your responsibility. So this is, again, not highly recommended. So the two recommended methods are, one, a standardized achievement test nationally normed within the last 10 years, or two, a written narrative prepared by a certified teacher, commonly called a portfolio review. Okay, let's talk about the difference between 1 and 2 here. There are only so many standardized achievement tests going around. You have the Iowa, and the Stanford, and I think there's one other one. But they have to be nationally normed within the last 10 years by state law. And remember, they have to cover all 5 areas. You cannot mix and match. Say, we're going to get science from this one and math from this one and English from this one. I ask, it doesn't work like that. So there are only 2 or 3 tests that'll do it. And because they're nationally normed within the last 10 years, for test security purposes, not just any, Tom, Dick, or Harry walking down the street can get a hold of a copy of it. You have to meet all the corporate, licensing and testing things. And so what happens is that you're going to go with a group. This is not something that you're going to do on your own. And the 2 groups in West Virginia that help you do this are the Christian Home Educators of West Virginia and the West Virginia Home Education Association. They both do standardized testing in the spring, and they make it so that you can get your test results back by June 30th. So that's a good reason to join one or both of the groups. Although you do not have to be a member of West Virginia Home Education Association to test with them. You can skip that. Now, the second option is a written narrative prepared by a certified teacher, a portfolio review. The caveat with this is that most public school teachers are unfamiliar with homeschooling requirements for portfolio reviews. So I recommend you use a homeschool-friendly teacher instead. The West Virginia Homeschool Haven and the Unsocialized Homeschoolers of West Virginia Facebook groups provide easy access to experienced portfolio reviewers. Find somebody that you like, see what they're going to ask you to come up with to provide proof of your child's education, and have them do the portfolio review. And you have to pay for it. Neither one of these are free. But do not send in the entire portfolio, just the written narrative that the person provides you. So, nitty-gritty details. Now we're going to get in the sticky wickets of actually doing this. You are responsible for the curriculum, aka the textbooks. You are responsible for any grades you may or may not wish to issue. You are responsible for transcripts. You are responsible for assessments. And in the end, you are responsible for your child's learning. Now, that said, it doesn't have to be expensive. Okay. Although, have you heard the thing about you can have it good, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap? Pick 2, because you cannot have all 3. So there are several main approaches, religious as well as secular. Now, if you are like me, when you were in teaching school, you probably saw a chart very similar to this. The 5 major educational philosophies, they may have slightly different names, but they kind of look like this. We have the perennialism and the idealism and the realism and the experimentalism and the existentialism. And then you have, how they deal with ontology and epistemology and axiology. And when it gets nitty gritty in, by subject and the how it actually gets applied in the classroom and what the goals and values of that education are. This is great. This is wonderful. This is lovely. That is not how homeschoolers think about this. Okay, so let's talk about types of homeschool education. All right, the first one, the more common one for a lot of people that they feel safe and comfortable with as a homeschooler, is called school at home. So it very much imitates the kind of school that you do in a classroom, but you're doing it at home instead. And so, we have your Rebecca, you have your BJU, you have your Alpha Omega, you have your Apologia. These are all Christian curriculum, and some people are very much on a Christian curriculum. If you're into the secular end, you're going to go with Calvert, probably. That's one of the more popular ones. Are these the only school at home? No, these are just some of the more popular ones of which I'm aware. So, you're going to have 180 days worth of material. You're going to have a textbook and a workbook and a teacher's edition. You may have like PowerPoints to go with it or recorded videos, and your students sit there and they're going to do all the things. Great, fine, wonderful, and you can get a great education out of this. But do you have to do it like this? No, you do not. And so your second option might be unit studies. And so a unit study used to be very popular in public schools, less popular now. These are what we also call thematic units or interdisciplinary units. And so what you're looking for then is a theme or a topic that you integrate a wide range of subjects and learning styles. So for example, if you're studying the Dust Bowl, right? You would read a piece of historical fiction about the Dust Bowl. Your student would, maybe actually put some dust in a bowl and play with it, get a tactile thing going on. They would do vocabulary words from it. They would do math, maybe some map-based or some money-based kind of math having to do with it. They would study maps about it. They would study maybe climate, in terms of science. You could study some climatology and see how it affected that and what kind of, talk about droughts and do a little study about that. And then you might, let's see, we got science and social studies and language arts, and you're going to write little essays about it. So that's your language arts, and you got your reading. And so it's all integrated in there. So this is very popular. A lot of people really enjoy this. And again, we have our 3 popular Christian curriculums and 1 popular secular curriculum. So that's one way to do it. Another one is what we call living books. Living books. And so these are sort of books that really speak to students and teach them. They're not necessarily all old books, although a lot of them are. And this is where you get, for example, The Heart of Dakota or My Father's World or Train Up a Child or even Mater Amabilis, which is a Catholic curriculum, by the way. So there's all kinds. Ambleside Online is free. It's very popular. And those are also Christian. A secular one would be Build Your Library. So that's a secular literature-based homeschool curriculum. Now, for many of these, you are only going to get, since they're literature-based, you're going to get your English language arts, and then you get your reading in there, and you may get your history, and very often they'll wrap in some science. But what you're probably not going to get is mathematics. So you're going to have to add in your own mathematics curriculum there. And then another popular one is classical education. This is my personal favorite. This is what we do at home. And so we have, for example, Tapestry of Grace. We have Classical Conversations, Memoria Press, Classical Academic Press, Circe Institute, and then The Well-Trained Mind. And so I don't know too much about these other ones, but in terms of The Well-Trained Mind, what makes it classical is it uses history as the backbone. And so, for example, it does 3 4-year loops. So the first year is going to be ancient history, and so you're going to read books about ancient history, you're going to write about ancient history, you're going to learn about ancient history. And then you do science that goes along with that, for example, biology. Because that was one of the first things that people did, right? They planted crops, right? And then you're going to study medieval history, and you're going to talk about in this year you're going to have a different science. I think this one is astronomy and geology you're going to focus on at that point. And again, you're going to read books about it, you're going to write about it, you're going to do narration and dictation, and you're going to develop your writing skills. So it's all built in there. except for math, of course. And then you're going to have early modern history. And here we're going to study some chemistry because this one, chemistry really became a thing. You got your Rutherfords and so on. And you do your history again, and you're going to read literature written in the time period. You're going to write about that literature. You're going to do narrations and dictations and summarization and map work about the places that you're studying and so on and so forth. And then finally, you're going to end up with modern history. And then you're going to talk about physics as the most recent science. And so this takes 4 years. You do first, second, third, fourth, come back again, hit it in middle school, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, come back again, hit it in high school, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And each year you're going to get more in depth and more difficult and learn kind of different things. So this is a big deal at my house. Now, but that's not the only one. Another one is eclectic, and a lot of people are sort of eclectic educators, which means that you really teach your child the thing that you think they should know. um, whether it's more book-based, like Sunlight, or hands-on, like Timberdoodle, or delivered electronically, like Easy Peasy. There are some secular ones. Acellus does this online. The Critical Thinking Company is fantastic, has some great materials. And then Time for Learning is also very popular. So these are kind of eclectic. They also tend to be more modern. Skip a lot of history there. Now, and then you can also think about it in terms of doing online school. Now, remember, none of these are recognized as being accredited by the state of West Virginia, but that doesn't mean that they can't be a good resource for you. Nobody is doing this out of the kindness of their heart. They are all for profit. Okay, some of them are secular, some of them are Christian, and some of them are just straight up corporate. They're big corporations and they want your money, which doesn't mean that they don't have good things to offer, right? So West Virginia has for many, 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 many years, the state of West Virginia has purchased individual courses from K-12 and the Florida virtual school to offer to West Virginia students, particularly, for example, if you live in a small town and your high school doesn't offer like Spanish 4, you could take it online through the virtual school. So this is where it comes from. But there are other options and other levels of expense, and so those are all something that you're going to want to have to judge for yourself, whether or not it's something for you. But you don't have to do an all-in-one, right? You can pick out different subjects for yourself. And if you have a child that maybe is a really great reader but not so awesome at math, or maybe it's just math comes really naturally to them and they're advanced in math, but their reading skills are not so hot, then you're going to want to teach them at their level of what they call their zone of proximal development. The thing that makes them interested and eager to start the day is just hard enough. So you are not going to want to purchase an all-in-one curriculum for that child. And so let's talk about individual curricula. So for example, we have mathematics. Right Start Mathematics is kind of a conceptual based product. It's very Montessori and a lot of learning science in it. It's secular. Then we have Saxon Math, which is kind of the opposite of Right Start Math in that it's very procedural and it's a lot of drill and reinforcement and interleaved interval-spaced repetition. But it gets great results. And then if you have that really mathy kid, the really just that math is so easy for them, sign them up with Beast Academy because that is math for the child gifted at mathematics. And if you just want your child to be good at mathematics and you want to make them work for it, and you want them to have excellent word problems, go with Singapore. Singapore is the way to go. Singapore Math. You buy that from singaporemath.com. If maybe you want some good mathematics instruction and you don't mind printing out a lot of stuff and doing some hands-on work there, it takes a little more time to invest, but it's free. We have MEP for the Mathematics Enhancement Program. It's out of the UK based on a Hungarian program, if I recall correctly. And out of South Africa, I think I could be wrong, is Math Mammoth. It's a workbook style. It's written like Saxon. It is written to the student. It's meant for the student to read and figure out on their own, pretty much. They have a whole set of work texts. If your student is guaranteed for whatever reason to be a visual learner, um, maybe they have a hearing impairment, maybe you as a parent are not very comfortable teaching mathematics, so you don't know that you can help them. Math UC is the way to go there. And then there's two smaller options I want to talk about. There's Miquan, which is a very hands-on math for the early grades. And then there's Khan Academy, which used to be less rigorous than it is now, but they are very much ship shape and upright, and they do K through 12, and they hit all the standards, they do it all. It's all online and it's all free. And if you set it up correctly as a teacher and student in the accounts, they'll send you weekly progress reports for how well your student's doing. You know that they'll be on grade level. Now, one of the more hot topics in homeschooling is how you teach your little one to read. And so these are some of the more popular, scientifically based, very, very popular programs. Probably the number one is Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. Unfortunately, they're not 100 absolutely fascinating lessons. So they get some knocks for being kind of dry. Then we have the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading, a little bit pricier. And the 100 Easy Lessons ends you up about the middle of second grade. Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading is designed to be a multi-year program. It goes all the way to fourth grade reading level. And if you have an older student perhaps who doesn't read quite so well and you don't want to stick them in a little kid's cutesy reading program, Phonics Pathways is the way to go here. It's an excellent program. If your child has a mild to slightly less than mild form of dyslexia, or you suspect dyslexia in your family, or maybe you just want reading instruction like idiot proof and all spelled out for you, All About Reading is your way to go. And they have some associated programs like All About Spelling. On the other hand, Explode the Code is extremely popular with good reason. So let's talk about the code of learning to read. And then Christian Light Education, also very popular, obviously Christian. Reading Eggs is good for the very youngest set there. And then if you want something integrated with handwriting and all that sort of early language arts going on, you can take a look at Logic of English. Very popular, very high quality. Now, one other one that you might want to think about is science education. And so these two are explicitly Christian. This is science neutral, which basically means it won't offend any Christians because it leaves out uh, like the age of the universe and evolution and whatnot. But it's a very popular program. If you're more workbooky, you want to just have a workbook that you know hits all the things, Daily Science from Evan Moore is your way to go. If you have a child who's just absolutely fascinated by science and asks all these questions, you're like, well, honey, I'm not actually sure of the answer to that. Got one of those kids? Building Foundations of Scientific Understanding is where it's at. It's not, there's no textbook. It's very hands-on, and you have to do your homework as the parental instructor, but it is a great program. Now, if you have an outdoorsy kid who would rather spend all their time out in nature, like doing hands-on kind of science, Exploring Nature with Children is a great low-cost program. Now, if you have a child who loves to do lots of experiments, they're always hauling the baking soda and vinegar out, Top Science is a set of experiment-based curricula. They're like little bits you can do. There's also I guess it's Tim's and Cosmos. That's a European company. And they offer science kits, very high quality, excellent, sort of like a textbook, all hands-on. Pandia Press offers some excellent secular science. If you want more of a regular public school kind of science, that you just know works and you want has an online component, Science Fusion is the way to go. CPO Science has some excellent science to go with it, very pricey though. And then if you just want some good old-fashioned textbooks, Prentice Hall Science Explorer is your friend over there. History. Well, history can be slightly controversial, believe it or not. So we'll talk about Pandia Press, which does sort of classical style history, lots of book-based history. Bookshark is history neutral, so it's Sunlight Christian curriculum with the overt Christianity stripped out. Uh, if you just want some bottom basic stuff going on, Evan Moore has some for you. For example, their daily geography, very easy to use. Oak Meadow offers some nice world history and regular other history programs, a little pricier, but very nicely done indeed. You can totally find your own public school textbooks. The publishers are happy to sell you homeschool kits. Um, if you're interested in classical education, Story of the World is the way to go for your younger set, a little history of the world, for example, for your older set. If you're really into sort of social justice kind of history, Howard Zen is your friend, and also along that way, Joy Hakim's A History of Us. If you're interested in a more religious approach to history and you want to do some literature in there, Beautiful Feet Books have some really nice programs. And another popular one is Not Grass History. Now, grammar and composition, the language arts part over here. So one of the lesser known but high quality ones is Hake Grammar. They look kind of like this. I don't recommend the writing set, just the grammar part of it. Very good, very easy to use, written to the student. Writing with ease, early elementary. We're looking at our K through 4, maybe 5 ages over here. Very delicate but high quality introduction to writing. Also, Evan Moore offers a daily 6th straight writing, one of the best writings students I ever had, one of the best students I ever had in terms of essay writing. This is what they use, this daily 6th straight writing. I am very impressed with Classical Academic Press's writing and rhetoric series. If you have a kid who likes to play with words, who likes to tell stories, this is their friend. You want something that's a little more basic and ready to go. We have Introduction to Composition from Memoria Press. If you have a student who just finds all of this utterly tedious and wants nothing to do with any writing and they just hate writing in general, this Kilgallen's composing. So they have sentence composing and para composing and grammar for elementary, middle, high, and college, and that's an excellent program. If you want a more unabashedly Christian and high quality program, Rod and Staff is the way to go. You can buy Voyages in English. It's a Catholic school textbook, but it's secular, very high quality. And then you have, for example, Mazda's Press Literature, because grammar and literature are not the same thing. And so if you want like your old-fashioned literature, your reading textbook kind of thing, Mazda's Press is where it's at. If you want to kind of outsource this as much as possible, Essentials in Writing, they'll send you DVDs with lessons, a workbook, a textbook, and your student watches it and they do the assignment. It's very, very, and it's high quality. There's good stuff they're learning there. IEW, I have never personally used. I've heard it described as sort of the Lego of writing or writing for engineers. So that never appealed to me, so I never looked into it, but I know it's popular. For your older students, Writing with Skill is another popular program. Write Shop, also popular, and Brave Writer, which is sort of more relaxed, like learn the joy of writing kind of program. And I think, yes, the very last thing that you should do when you get started is join the West Virginia Home Education Association or the Christian Home Education, Christian Home Educators of West Virginia, or both. Why not both? So I hope you've enjoyed this tour of homeschooling and how to get started here in West Virginia. Please feel free to contact me with any other questions or concerns.